Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and Voxservative. Thanks for tuning in. Got a couple different things to talk about tonight. A lot of stuff going on. First of all is the big news of the day, which is, of course, the fact that the God Emperor has trashed the Iran nuke deal. Now, I am not even going to attempt to try to figure out what this means, what the implications are, all that sort of thing. You know, some people are saying, oh, Trump is doing this to go to war with Iran for Israel. Other people are following QAnon and seeing this as being related to draining the global swamp. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of potential interpretations. I'm not interested in getting into any of that because I don't know. And so the important thing to keep in mind is that President Trump has earned our trust. And the important thing to keep in mind is that we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's really going on. So don't overreact. Just wait and see. You know, we all remember when, oh, we're going to war in Syria. Oh, we're going to war on the Korean Peninsula. Well, neither of those things happened. And neither of those things look even remotely likely to happen. So, you know, for me, my gut instinct is that this is something that Obama pursued. This is something that the European Union was involved in, and therefore it's probably a good thing that that the USA has pulled out of it. So relax, kick back, watch the news, don't overreact, see what happens. That, I think, is the correct way to look at it. I do know some of the folks in Israel are a bit nervous about this. And so, you know, maybe there is more going on there than we know. We'll find out. You know, we have no control over this stuff anyhow, so let's just wait and see what happens. I thought it was interesting and timely that the New York Times was kind enough to back up what I was saying on the Alex Jones show about the way in which Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson are being elevated as fake opposition. They're serving as the Buckley 3.0 brigade. They're serving as the neocons. They're serving as the people who took over the Tea Party. And the New York Times practically came out and confirmed the whole thing. They came out and said, oh, these are the intellectuals that you must pay attention to. They are the opposition, and so forth. Well, if they were, I can tell you for a fact that if they were the opposition, then the New York Times would not be writing about them. I got contacted by the New York Times on at least 4 occasions after the election. And there's a big piece on the alt-right. Twice it was actually the reporter that Donald Trump made fun of. And so he contacted me. He sent me these questions. You can actually read them on my blog. If you go to the blog, do a search for New York Times and questions, you will find the questions that I was sent. Actually, no. I think I left the questions off because I didn't want to, I don't like to publish other people's emails unless I've warned them that. But I did publish all of my answers that I sent him. And so you can, the one with the disability. you can probably figure out what the questions were. And so it was interesting to see that they did not use a single quote from me. And the funny thing was, he came back a second time and said, I've got some questions for you. I really want to, get some insight on this sort of thing. And I said, why would I answer your questions when you didn't run anything that I answered last time? And he actually tried to say, oh, no, it was just that we ran out of space and all this sort of thing, which amused me. And so I thought it was funny. I was actually curious to know what his questions were, like if they were any different than the previous questions. So I said, fine, go ahead and send me your questions again, and I will answer them. I will answer all of them. So I answered them. Poof! They disappeared into thin air again, except for, of course, they're on the blog. Now I think they finally figured out that not only am I on to them, but that I am not the least bit hesitant to go ahead and publish my answers anyhow. And so, they don't want my answers because they don't fit the narrative that they're trying to push. That's something that you need to keep in mind with the media. A lot of you who have never worked in the media don't understand that there's always a narrative behind every story. Oftentimes it's not even the reporter's narrative. It is the narrative given to the reporter by the editor. They'll say, we want a story on this guy, and we need to, we want to know more about this, and we want to show that he's a bad guy, and et cetera, et cetera. And so because of that, it's very easy to see from the nature of the questions what their narrative is. And you can either cooperate with it, or you can disrupt it, or you can go orthogonal and simply not play ball with it. And so, when you're dealing with people like Ben Shapiro, when you're dealing with people like Sam Harris, when you're dealing with people like Jordan Peterson, if you notice, all the people that were selected as fake opposition by the New York Times were of the political centrist, about, I don't know, I would say that 3/4 of them were either atheist or agnostic. It looked like about half of them, half to 2/3 of them, were Jewish. Absolutely none of them were Christian. Absolutely none of them were Trump supporters. And absolutely none of them were nationalists. So they're not the opposition to the globalist. They're not the opposition to the socialists, the United Nations, etc., all that. There's nothing dark web or anything about it. These are basically the Internet 3.0 social media stars that they approve of. I mean, come on. If you look at the people that were omitted, first and foremost, where was Stefan Molyneux? Where was Milo Yiannopoulos? Where was Mike Cernovich? Where was Jack Posobiec? I mean, these people have multiples of the followers of most of the no-namers were mentioned. I'm not on the level of those guys in terms of social media following. I'm not even on Twitter. I got kicked off of Twitter back, I don't know, like October, November for the second time. So, whatever. It's kind of funny that they're Twitter's always sending me emails saying, you should join us. I'm like, look, I don't really mind being kicked off, but, why are you trying to get me to sign back up again? This is ridiculous. Clearly their right hand doesn't know what their left hand is doing. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. If you look at it, even David French and Jonah Goldberg are too far to the right to suit these guys. And they were rehashing. I don't know if you guys know who Michael Shermer is, but Michael Shermer was actually pre-New Atheist. They rehashed Sam Harris. Like I said on my post today, I was a little surprised that they didn't dig up the corpse of Christopher Hitchens and put him in there. But Michael Shermer has been around and been a significant atheist since before Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and Chris Hitchens got their whole New Atheist game on, thanks to Wired. And what was funny is if you haven't seen this, you really have to look it up. The 2006 Wired article called the Church of the Non-Believers or whatever it was. The pictures that they used for that were clearly the model for the pictures that were used for this intellectual dark web. It's hilarious. And so, but when you're leaving out people like Steve Saylor, when you're leaving out people like Alex Jones, and you're saying, well, no, those people are beyond the line. See, what that piece was meant to do, the renegades of the intellectual dark web, they were trying to create a line between what is acceptable and what is not. The New York Times finds Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and some of these other no-namers that they brought up, as well as people like Mike Shermer and Sam Harris, they find them to be the acceptable, approved, preferred, fake opposition. You would almost think it's a parody calling them, renegades and whatnot. It's absolutely ludicrous. And so, Ron Unz actually would be a vastly more significant figure than pretty much all of those people combined. Anyhow, I personally find it a very useful article because it's basically telling everybody on the right, these people are not really on your side. Anytime you have somebody popping up to try to defend people like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and so forth, you can say, hey, look, they're fakes. They are fake opposition. They are the New York Times approved fake opposition. They are not on our side. Now, what I thought was interesting was the Alex Jones video on YouTube, the video of my appearance on InfoWars, has about 22,000 views so far. What's interesting about it is that when I did my first blog post criticizing Jordan Peterson, 85% of my own readership was against me initially. Now, my readers are cool. They have learned, not to overreact, at least not to me. And so, they were like, I got several emails and more than a few comments on the blog saying, Vox, what the hell are you doing? This is somebody who's on our side. Why are you doing this? And at the time, I didn't know much about the guy. I just knew that he had lied about the whole intelligence thing. And that and watching one or two videos was enough to convince me that there was something seriously off there. So I started looking into it. Now, what was interesting is that was only maybe 2 weeks ago at most, probably less. And so within 2 weeks, more than 50% of the people who bothered to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on that YouTube video. Over 1,000 people had thumbs up, and like 910 had thumbs down. Remember, there's two videos, so you can't just look at the numbers on the one. There's the slightly shorter one, and there's the longer one. And so what's intriguing to me is that people are beginning to figure this out. People are beginning to figure out that Jordan Peterson is not what he seems. And I think that's important. And I think it's a very good sign that people are beginning to see through this kabuki. That people are beginning to see through this theater, this fake pro wrestling, Harlem Globetrotters versus the Washington Generals, where you've got the fake opposition constantly taking a dive and absolutely refusing to move the arguments forward, to move the positions and the ideology and the thinking of the right forward. And so, this is just another attempt of the same thing, where the left is attempting to provide their own opposition in order to make sure that they win. So, anyhow, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. It will be interesting to see how people react to the idea that their alternative champions turn out to be people who are controlled opposition. And I think that we're going to see a lot of very disappointed and very angry people once they realize that. I mean, frankly, if my readers were to find out that I was being, paid under the table by the New York Times in order to sabotage the political right, I wouldn't blame them for being absolutely furious with me. And so, it's there's a question: has Peterson responded? No, Jordan Peterson has not responded at all, and I do not expect him to respond to me in any way, shape, or form. And I can say that with a fair degree of confidence because the guy is a gamma male. They don't like conflict. They are afraid of exposure. Peterson says to practically everybody, "Oh, I'm terrified of making a mistake. I'm terrified I'm going to be exposed," and that sort of thing. And so, he's not just saying that; he genuinely is, because he's a con artist. All con artists are afraid that the con will be busted. I think they're approved opposition. I don't think that they are actually controlled opposition in the sense that William F. Buckley probably was. Oh, there's no question. Gammas never ever forget a crime against them. One thing a lot of people don't realize is that Jordan Peterson has a lot of anger in him. And to a certain extent, rightfully so. He's very, very angry at the God he doesn't believe in. And, it's very, very obvious. And to a certain extent, that's something that makes him relatable to people. It makes him relatable to people because there are a lot of people who are angry at God because of things that have gone wrong in their lives, because of tragedy they've experienced, because of suffering they've experienced. But at the end of the day, you have to get past it. No, Jordan Peterson is not Catholic. Neither is Ben Shapiro. And so One of the things that I pointed out, people have asked me before, they said, look, you've got this very dark view of human history. You've got this very dark view of a fallen world that is ruled over by a immortal, homicidal maniac. Why are you cheerful? Why aren't you more upset, depressive, angry, whatever? And the answer is very simple. One of the things that Jesus Christ does for you, and he even says that he'll do it for you, is it gives you hope. Religion and faith is not all about correct behavior. And you see that a lot from people who aren't Christians saying, well, it's about this, it's about that, it's about, but it's really not. Everybody's experience is different. But for me, the most important thing is the hope that you have even when things go very, very badly. Even when things go very, very poorly, even when you're disappointed, even when you're angry, even when you're hurting. And so, but that's an interesting comment. Hope is for the desperate and the poor, just like all man-made religions. Hope is not just for the desperate and the poor. Hope is for everybody. Hope is for every man and woman, because everybody needs to be able to hope. This is why C.S. Lewis wrote that famous scene where Puddleglum, the marsh wiggle, is being told and being convinced that everything he knows about Narnia is a delusion, and it's all false. And Puddleglum just says, you know what? I don't care. I choose the delusion over your reality. I choose to maintain my faith rather than accept what you're telling me is the real world. And of course, as it turns out, he's actually right. She's not telling him the truth. She's not telling him what the real world is. And the delusion that he had is actually the real world. Now, these are things that I understand are not something that the materialist, that the rational empiricist can accept. And that's okay. That's to be expected. But by the same token, I'm just answering the question. Why aren't you depressed about the fact that, this massive war between nationalist and globalist and immigrant is going to engulf the world? Now, I'm angry about it. I'm angry about it because it is so totally unnecessary. Without the 1965 Immigration Nationalization Act, without the Windrush generation, without Angela Merkel bringing in all these people, none of these things would be necessary. None of this would happen. And it was unnecessary. But at the same time, we've been told for 2,000 years there will be wars and rumors of wars. So there's no reason to get down about it. It's to be expected. And at least now we know why it'll happen. We know why it will happen. We have a pretty good idea of when it will happen. And we have a pretty good idea of what the various sides are. That's more warning than most people throughout human history have ever gotten. So at least we can appreciate that. But in the meantime, what I would encourage you to do is to support that which you know is good, to not support that which you know is not good, and attempt to do your best to understand the truth to the full extent of your capabilities. And so, okay, here's a good question. No, I'm not an occultist. I would say I'm an anti-occultist. How do you justify via the New Testament to be anti-immigrant? It's very simple. Jesus Christ himself said that the bread is to be reserved for the family. You don't feed the dogs from the table. They also said that anyone who does not provide first for his family is doing worse than an evildoer, if I recall correctly. I'm mangling the verse there, but the sentiment is very clear. You are to take care of your own first. You know, the whole, if you recall, the saying is, love your neighbor as yourself. Worse than an unbeliever, you're right. Love your neighbor as yourself, not love everyone as yourself. And the other important thing to keep in mind is, who is the neighbor? The neighbor is not the guy beaten up in the lying beside the road, on the side of the road. The neighbor is the Good Samaritan. So, anyhow, enough of that. Have a good evening, and keep an eye on what the president is going to do in Iran. Should be interesting, and have a good evening.